I was rushed to the hospital unconscious. The doctors called my son, but he said, "I'm busy. My name is Geneva Nelson, and I'm 68 years old." After my husband Robert passed away 5 years ago, I've lived alone in our Boston home, finding peace in my garden and community activities. My son Benjamin has grown increasingly distant, always too busy with his law career and perfect family. That Tuesday afternoon, while tending to my roses, everything went dark without warning. I woke up in a hospital bed, confused and afraid. What the nurse told me next shattered my heart when the doctor called Ben about my critical condition. His response was chilling. "I'm busy taking my wife to dinner. She doesn't have much time anyway." If you're watching this story, I'd love to know where you're joining from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how I finally stood up for myself after a lifetime of putting others first. The years following Robert's death had been an exercise in finding myself again. After 35 years as a school principal, retirement should have been my time for joy and relaxation. Robert and I had planned trips to Europe, volunteer work, and endless gardening projects. Cancer stole him just 2 years into our retirement, leaving me adrift in a too-quiet house filled with memories. Benjamin, our only child, had once been a warm, compassionate boy. I remembered how he'd bring injured birds home determined to save them. He'd spend hours reading to his father when Robert's eyes grew too weak from chemotherapy. But somewhere between law school and making partner at Sullivan and Brooks, that boy disappeared. The caring son was replaced by a man obsessed with appearances, achievements, and acquisitions. "Mom, you should consider downsizing," became his constant refrain during his increasingly rare visits. "That house is too much for you to manage alone." What he didn't say, but I understood clearly, was that my 4-bedroom colonial in a desirable Boston suburb represented capital that wasn't benefiting him. Robert had been prudent with our finances, leaving me comfortable with his teacher's pension, my own retirement, and a substantial life insurance policy. "Benjamin, this is my home," I'd explain patiently. "My garden is my therapy. My neighbors are my support system." The conversations grew more strained as months passed. Ben began bringing financial articles about protecting assets and leaving paperwork for me to sign. Power of attorney forms appeared with sticky notes indicating where I should sign. "It's just in case something happens, Mom," he'd say, checking his watch every few minutes. "Sophia and I want to make sure you're taken care of." Sophia, my daughter-in-law, rarely accompanied him anymore. My granddaughter Emma, now 12, appeared in fewer and fewer family photos on Ben's social media. When I asked about her, the answers were vague. "She's busy with school activities," or "she's at a friend's house today." My friendship with Diane Kennedy became my lifeline. We'd worked together at the same school for 20 years before retiring within months of each other. After Robert's funeral, it was Diane who made sure I ate, who dragged me out to community events, who reminded me I was still alive. "Geneva, he's taking advantage of you," Diane said bluntly over coffee one morning, 3 months before my collapse. "Have you looked at what those papers actually say?" I admitted I hadn't. I'd been raised to trust family implicitly, and the idea that my son would work against my interests seemed impossible. But Diane's words planted a seed of doubt. That same week, I joined a senior center program called Vibrant Aging on Diane's recommendation. The first session changed everything. We were asked to list our personal strengths, and I sat with a blank paper, unable to see myself as anything but Robert's wife or Benjamin's mother. That's when Michael Parker sat down beside me. At 70, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he projected a quiet confidence. "Stuck?" he asked, glancing at my empty paper. "I can't think of anything," I admitted. "Well, in the 10 minutes I've observed you, I've noticed you're observant, empathetic, and have a wicked sense of humor," he said. "That's 3 already." Michael had lost his wife to Alzheimer's 2 years prior and understood the struggle to reclaim identity after being a caregiver. We began having coffee after classes, talking about books, gardening, and gradually our concerns about adult children who seemed to view us as burdens or resources rather than people. "My daughter suggested I move into assisted living last Christmas," Michael confided. I asked if she'd researched the average age and health status of residents. When she admitted she hadn't, I gave her homework: visit 3 facilities and report back. She stopped mentioning it. His gentle assertion of boundaries inspired me. I began looking more critically at the documents Ben left. Some were genuine financial planning tools, but others would have granted him control over my assets while I was still perfectly competent to manage them myself. The Tuesday of my collapse had begun normally. I'd attended a morning yoga class at the senior center, waved to Michael across the room, and planned to spend the afternoon working in my garden. The June weather was perfect, warm with a slight breeze. I remembered feeling slightly off balance as I knelt to weed around my prize roses. My vision blurred momentarily, but I attributed it to standing too quickly. By 3 o'clock, the dizziness had worsened. I felt unnaturally thirsty, but also nauseous. When my hands began trembling so badly, I dropped my garden shears. I knew something was seriously wrong. I managed to reach my phone and call Diane. "Something's not right," I told her, my voice slurring slightly. "I can't seem to focus. I'm calling 911 right now." Diane's voice sounded distant, though I could hear her urgency. "Stay on the line with me, Geneva." Those were the last words I remembered before everything went black. The roses, the phone, the sunny day all disappeared as I collapsed among the flowers I'd tended so carefully. The first sensation I registered was the antiseptic smell. Before I opened my eyes, I knew I was in a hospital. The rhythmic beeping of monitors, the squeak of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum, the murmur of professional voices all confirmed it. When I finally managed to lift my eyelids, they felt impossibly heavy. "Welcome back, Mrs. Nelson," said a woman in a white coat, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. "I'm Dr. Wright. You're at Massachusetts General Hospital. You were brought in unconscious about 4 hours ago." My mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton. "Water," I managed to croak. After a few sips through a straw, I tried to organize my scattered thoughts. "What happened to me?" "You experienced severe hypoglycemia, dangerously low blood sugar," Dr. Wright explained, checking the monitors beside my bed. "The paramedics found you unconscious in your garden. Your blood glucose was critically low at 32 mg DL when they arrived. We've stabilized you, but we need to run more tests." "I don't have diabetes," I said automatically. "It appears you might," she replied gently. "Sometimes type 2 diabetes develops gradually with symptoms easy to miss or attribute to aging. Have you been experiencing increased thirst, fatigue, blurry vision?" I thought about the past few months, the constant water bottle refills, the afternoon exhaustion I'd blamed on gardening and the heat, the occasional need to squint at my book club novels. "I thought it was just getting older," I admitted. Dr. Wright nodded sympathetically. "That's common. The good news is that we caught it, and with proper management, you can continue your normal activities. But Mrs. Nelson, this was a very close call. If your friend hadn't called the ambulance when she did this, could have been much worse. Severe hypoglycemia can cause brain damage or even be fatal if not treated promptly." As the gravity of my situation sank in, I asked, "Has anyone been notified that I'm here?" "We called your emergency contact, your son Benjamin Nelson." Something flickered across Dr. Wright's face, a momentary tightness around her eyes. "Is he coming?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. Before she could respond, a nurse entered, checking my IV line. As she adjusted the flow rate, she glanced at Dr. Wright. "The son still hasn't arrived. I followed up as requested." "And?" Dr. Wright prompted. The nurse hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "He said he had dinner reservations with his wife that couldn't be changed." I explained the seriousness of Mrs. Nelson's condition, but she trailed off clearly, not wanting to repeat his exact words in front of me. "It's okay," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "What did my son say?" The nurse and doctor exchanged glances before the nurse continued reluctantly. "He said, 'I'm busy taking my wife to dinner. She doesn't have much time anyway.'" Even after I explained this might be, she stopped abruptly. "Might be what?" I pressed. Dr. Wright took over. The nurse informed him that your condition was critical, and that in cases of severe hypoglycemia at your age, there was a possibility of complications, that this might be a situation where family should be present. The unspoken words hung in the air, that I might not make it through the night. My son had chosen dinner reservations over what might have been his last chance to see his mother alive. The physical pain of my condition paled compared to the searing emotional wound those words inflicted. I turned my face away, not wanting these kind medical professionals to see my tears. Dr. Wright dismissed the nurse and sat beside my bed, a rare action for a busy emergency physician. "Mrs. Nelson, I'm sorry. Family dynamics can be complicated and medical emergencies sometimes reveal difficult truths. He's been distant for years," I found myself confiding. "But I never imagined he could be so cold. Is there someone else we can call for you? Another relative or friend?" "Diane Kennedy," I said immediately. "She's the one who called the ambulance." Within 30 minutes, Diane burst into my hospital room, her usual composure replaced by frantic concern. "Geneva, thank God you're awake. I've been calling and calling, but they wouldn't tell me anything because I'm not family." She clutched my hand, and I noticed she still wore her gardening clothes soil under her fingernails. She must have come directly from her home after hearing about my hospitalization. "The doctors say I have diabetes," I told her. "Apparently I've had it for a while without knowing." "And Benjamin? Have they reached him?" The question reopened the wound. I recounted what the nurse had reported, watching Diane's expression transform from concern to outrage. "That ungrateful, selfish—" She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Geneva. That must be devastating to hear, Doctor." Wright returned with test results that confirmed the diabetes diagnosis and outlined a treatment plan. "We'll need to keep you for observation for at least 3 days," she explained. "Your body has experienced significant stress, and we need to establish the right medication protocol before sending you home." After she left, Diane helped me process the dual shocks of my medical condition and my son's betrayal. As night fell and visiting hours ended, she promised to return the next day with personal items from my home. Alone in the hospital room, I replayed memories of Benjamin's childhood, his first steps taken toward my outstretched arms, his proud smile when he brought home perfect report cards, the tears I wiped away after his first heartbreak. Where was that boy now? When had he transformed into a man who could dismiss his mother's life so callously? I thought of all the times I'd rearranged my schedule to accommodate his needs, driving hours to attend his law school graduation, babysitting Emma on short notice when their nanny quit hosting elaborate holiday meals that Sophia critiqued more than enjoyed. The pattern was clear now, illuminated by the harsh light of his latest action. I had become an inconvenience, or worse, merely an asset waiting to be claimed. The thought that my own child might be waiting for me to die, might even welcome it as a financial windfall, was almost unbearable. Sleep eluded me that night, but something else took shape in those dark hours: resolve. If I survived this crisis, and Dr. Wright seemed confident I would with proper treatment, things would have to change. The hospital room became my unexpected classroom over the next few days, teaching me hard truths about my son and myself. Benjamin finally appeared on Thursday afternoon, 3 days after my admission, wearing an immaculate suit and carrying his leather portfolio rather than flowers or any personal item that might indicate concern. "Mom," he said, leaning down to brush his lips against my cheek. The gesture felt rehearsed, empty. "You're looking better than I expected." "The doctors say I'm responding well to treatment," I replied, searching his face for any genuine emotion. "They've diagnosed me with type 2 diabetes." "That's unfortunate," he said, sitting in the visitor's chair and opening his portfolio. "But manageable with lifestyle changes from what I understand. Actually, this might be a good opportunity to discuss the assisted living options I've been researching. They have staff to monitor medical conditions." No inquiry about how I felt, no apology for not coming sooner, not even the pretense of concern before pivoting to his agenda. I felt something shift inside me, another piece of maternal illusion crumbling away. "I'm not ready for assisted living, Benjamin. The doctor says I can manage this condition perfectly well at home." He extracted a document from his portfolio. I've taken the liberty of updating the power of attorney paperwork we discussed. Given this health scare, it seems prudent to have everything in order. I've highlighted where you need to sign. I stared at the paper he placed on my meal tray, the yellow sticky tabs marking signature lines. What exactly would this authorize you to do? Benjamin sighed, the sound tinged with impatience. It's standard language, Mom. It allows me to make financial and healthcare decisions if you're unable to do so yourself, which given recent events seems increasingly likely. I'd like to read it first, I said, not reaching for the pen he offered. Of course, he replied, checking his watch. Though it's identical to what we discussed before. I have a client meeting in an hour, so perhaps you could review and sign today. I can pick it up on my way back to the office. A nurse entered to check my vitals, and Benjamin stepped into the hallway to take a phone call. The nurse, Linda, according to her badge, smiled sympathetically as she wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm. Your son finally made it in, she observed. That's good. He brought paperwork, not concern, I replied, surprised by my own candor. Linda nodded as if this confirmed something. Unfortunately, we see that more often than you'd think. As she adjusted my pillows, Benjamin's voice drifted through the partially open door. Yes, I'm at the hospital now. No, it's looking manageable. The House conservative estimates put it around $875,000 in this market, possibly more with the garden lot. I know, but we need to be patient about getting her affairs in order. My blood ran cold. He was discussing the value of my home while I lay in a hospital bed 20 feet away. Linda pretended not to hear, but her gentle pat on my shoulder told me she had. Your friend Diane called, she said. She's stopping by during evening visiting hours. After the nurse left and Benjamin returned, I studied my son with new eyes. His handsome features, so like his father's, now seemed like a mask, concealing something calculating. How had I missed it for so long? I'm feeling tired, Benjamin, I said. Could we discuss this paperwork another time? Annoyance flickered across his face. Mom, I've taken time out of my workday to bring these over. It would be helpful if you could cooperate. The word cooperate struck me as particularly revealing, as if I were being difficult by not immediately acquiescing to his demands while recovering from a near-fatal medical emergency. I appreciate you coming, I said carefully, but I need time to review any legal documents. Doctor, Wright says stress can affect my blood sugar levels, so I'd prefer to focus on my recovery right now. Benjamin collected the papers with obvious irritation. Fine, I'll check back tomorrow. Try to prioritize this, Mom. It's for your own protection. After he left, exhaustion washed over me, not just physical fatigue from my condition, but emotional depletion from seeing through my son's facade. When Diane arrived that evening, she brought troubling news. I ran into Marge Wilson at the pharmacy, she said, referring to another retired teacher whose son worked at the same law firm as Benjamin. She mentioned something concerning Geneva. Apparently there's talk at the firm about Benjamin having significant gambling debts, high-stakes poker games with clients that got out of hand. That can't be right, I protested weakly. He makes partner-level income. Sophia posts about their luxury vacations constantly. Which might explain the debts, Diane pointed out. Living beyond their means to keep up appearances. Later that evening, Emma called my hospital phone clearly without her parents' knowledge. Grandma, are you really sick? Her young voice quavered with genuine concern. I'm getting better, sweetheart, I assured her. How did you know I was here? I overheard Dad talking to Mom. They didn't know I was listening. She paused. Dad said something about you being financially unprepared for long-term care, and that they might need to accelerate the timeline. What does that mean, Grandma? The innocent question revealed so much. It's complicated adult stuff, Emma. Nothing for you to worry about. Are you coming home soon? Maybe I could visit you when you do. I miss your cookies and your stories. The simple, honest affection in her voice brought tears to my eyes. At least there was one pure relationship in my family. I'd love that, Emma. I miss you too, As visiting hours ended and night settled over the hospital, I found myself facing an unpleasant truth. My son viewed me as a financial resource to be managed, not a mother to be loved. The house he'd grown up in, the garden where he'd once played, the savings his father and I had carefully accumulated, all were now assets in his mental ledger waiting to be claimed. The betrayal cut deep, but it also clarified what I needed to do next. The 5th day in the hospital marked a turning point. My medical condition had stabilized, with my blood sugar levels responding well to medication and the specialized diabetic diet. The emotional wounds, however, remained raw and throbbing. Dr. Wright stopped by during morning rounds, pleased with my progress. "Your numbers are looking good, Mrs. Nelson. If this continues, we can discuss discharge planning tomorrow." "Thank you for everything," I said sincerely. "Not just the medical care, but for your kindness when I learned about my son's response to my condition." She sat down, something I'd noticed she rarely had time to do during her busy rounds. "Mrs. Nelson, Geneva, if I may, I've been practicing medicine for over 20 years, and I've seen many family dynamics play out in crisis situations. Some beautiful, some heartbreaking. What's important is that you prioritize your health and well-being now." "I'm beginning to understand that," I admitted. "For too long I've put everyone else first." "The hospital has excellent social workers who can help you navigate this situation," Dr. Wright suggested. "Would you like me to arrange a consultation?" I nodded gratefully. "I think that would be wise." Later that morning, a compassionate social worker named Jamal visited my room. With over 15 years of experience in elder services, he listened carefully as I explained the situation with Benjamin, including the power of attorney documents and my concerns about his financial motives. "Unfortunately, what you're describing sounds like potential financial exploitation," Jamal said gently. "It's more common than people realize, particularly when adult children face financial pressures of their own." He outlined several protective measures I could take, consulting with an elder law attorney, reviewing and possibly changing my will and financial arrangements, setting up automatic bill payments to maintain independence, and even considering a different emergency contact for medical situations. "The most important thing," Jamal emphasized, "is that you're of sound mind and legally entitled to make these decisions for yourself. A diabetes diagnosis doesn't change that as long as it's properly managed." By afternoon, I'd made several phone calls from my hospital bed to my bank, requesting a temporary freeze on major withdrawals, to a recommended elder law attorney scheduling a consultation for the week after my discharge, and to Michael from the senior center, who had left 3 concerned messages with the nurses' station. "I've been worried sick," Michael said when we connected. "Diane told me what happened, both medically and with your son. I'm so sorry, Geneva." "I've been naive," I admitted. "I wanted to believe the best about my son, even when the evidence suggested otherwise." "That's not naive, that's being a parent," Michael assured me. "The question is, what you do now that you see the situation clearly." His words stayed with me as Benjamin arrived later that afternoon, this time with Sophia in tow. My daughter-in-law rarely visited, and her presence signaled the importance Benjamin placed on getting the power of attorney documents signed. "Mom, you remember the papers we discussed yesterday?" Benjamin began without preamble. "I've brought a notary with me today to make this efficient." He gestured to a young woman who hovered uncomfortably in the doorway. "That's thoughtful, but I've decided not to sign anything until I've had it reviewed by my own attorney," I said calmly. Benjamin's expression hardened. "Your attorney, Mom, I am an attorney. These are standard documents that I've prepared specifically to protect you. Nevertheless, I'd like independent legal advice before signing." Sophia stepped forward, her designer outfit looking out of place in the utilitarian hospital room. "Geneva, we're only thinking of your best interests. This health scare has shown how vulnerable you are living alone." The condescension in her tone ignited something in me. Vulnerable? I had a medical emergency that could happen to anyone anywhere. The doctor says I can manage this condition perfectly well at home. "Mom, be reasonable," Benjamin pressed. "You were found unconscious in your garden. If your neighbor hadn't called 911. "It was my friend Diane who called, not a neighbor," I corrected. "And yes, I'm grateful for the quick medical response. but that doesn't mean I need to sign over control of my life and finances. The notary shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps I should wait outside, she murmured, clearly sensing the tension. After she stepped out, Benjamin's facade cracked. This is ridiculous. I've taken time out of my workday again to help you get your affairs in order, and you're being stubborn and uncooperative. Like I was uncooperative by having a medical emergency during your dinner plans, I asked quietly. His face flushed. That's not fair. I didn't know how serious it was. You were told it might be my last night alive. I said, the words hanging heavily in the air. And you chose dinner reservations. Sophia attempted damage control. What Benjamin meant was, I know exactly what he meant. I interrupted, surprising myself with my assertiveness. That I don't have much time anyway, so why rearrange your evening plans? That my life is an inconvenience to your schedule. Benjamin's expression shifted from anger to calculated concern. Mom, you're clearly emotional right now, which is understandable given your medical condition. This is precisely why we need legal provisions in place for times when your judgment might be compromised. The manipulation was so transparent, it almost took my breath away. He was using my rightful anger as evidence that I couldn't make decisions for myself. I think it's best if you both leave now, I said with remarkable steadiness. I'll be discharged tomorrow, and I need rest. We'll discuss this when you're thinking more clearly, Benjamin said, gathering his documents. As they left, I heard him mutter to Sophia, this might require a different approach. That night, unable to sleep despite my exhaustion, I came to a decision. The woman who had entered this hospital, the accommodating mother who prioritized her son's wishes over her own well-being, would not be the same woman who walked out. It was time to protect myself, even if that meant protecting myself from my own child. The morning of my hospital discharge arrived with unexpected emotion. After 6 days of round-the-clock monitoring and care, returning to independence felt both liberating and daunting. Dr. Wright provided detailed instructions for managing my diabetes, including medication schedules, blood sugar testing procedures, dietary guidelines, and warning signs that would necessitate medical attention. You have my direct number, she said, handing me her card. Don't hesitate to call if you have concerns. And Geneva, she hesitated, then continued, take care of yourself in all ways, not just medically. I understood her meaning. I intend to. Diane arrived to drive me home, her car loaded with groceries appropriate for my new dietary needs. Michael helped me shop, she explained. He's quite knowledgeable about diabetic nutrition. His late wife had the condition. The mention of Michael brought an unexpected warmth. His thoughtfulness, even from a distance, provided a stark contrast to my son's coldness. As we pulled into my driveway, I noticed a sleek black BMW parked on the street, Benjamin's car. That's strange, I muttered. I didn't tell him I was being discharged today. Do you want me to come in with you? Diane asked, concern evident in her voice. Please. I answered, suddenly apprehensive about what awaited inside my own home. Using my key, I opened the front door to sounds of activity from upstairs. Benjamin? I called out. No answer. Diane and I exchanged worried glances and moved toward the staircase. The sounds led us to my bedroom, where I stopped short at the doorway, stunned by the scene before me. Benjamin stood by my dresser, rifling through my jewelry box. Sophia was at my closet, examining the vintage designer handbags I'd collected over decades. Both froze when they saw me. Mom! Benjamin exclaimed hastily, closing the jewelry box. You're home. Clearly, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The question is, why are you in my bedroom going through my belongings? Sophia stepped away from the closet. Geneva, we were just organizing things for you. After your hospital stay, we thought you might appreciate some help getting your house in order. The transparent lie hung in the air. On my bed lay several items of significant value. My grandmother's pearl necklace, the diamond earrings Robert had given me for our 30th anniversary, and the small Tiffany clock that had been a retirement gift from my school colleagues. Organizing, I repeated, looking directly at the curated collection of valuables. By removing my most precious possessions. Benjamin shifted into damage control mode. Mom, you're misinterpreting the situation. We were cataloging your valuables for insurance purposes. Given your health scare, it seemed prudent to document everything properly. Without my knowledge or permission. While I was in the hospital. We have a key for emergencies, he said defensively. This isn't an emergency, I pointed out. This is an invasion. Diane, who had been silently observing, spoke up. I think you should both leave now. Benjamin's expression hardened as he turned to her. With all due respect, Diane, this is a family matter. Perhaps you should give us some privacy. She stays, I said firmly. And I'd like you both to leave my house immediately. Sophia began gathering her purse and coat, clearly eager to escape the confrontation. Benjamin, however, wasn't ready to retreat. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. The medication, the stress, it's affecting your judgment. This hostile attitude isn't like you. You're right about one thing, I agreed. This isn't like me. The me you're accustomed to would have accepted your excuses, prioritized your feelings, and ignored my own. That ends today. You're being dramatic, he scoffed. We were helping, not stealing. I stepped closer, holding his gaze. Then why didn't you tell me you were coming? Why enter when you thought I'd still be at the hospital? Why were the items on my bed all valuable pieces that could be easily transported and sold? His composure slipped, revealing an ugly truth. You know what, fine. Yes, I was looking for items of value. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to maintain our lifestyle? The private school tuition for Emma, the country club fees, the mortgage on a house in the right neighborhood. So this is about money, I said softly. Of course it's about money, he exploded. It's always about money. Dad left you well provided for while I'm drowning in debt, trying to give my family the life they deserve. The life they deserve, or the life you think impresses others? I asked. His face contorted with anger. Don't psychoanalyze me. You've been sitting in this paid-off house with your comfortable pension while I've been working 80-hour weeks. And for what? To watch you waste it all on gardening supplies and senior center activities when that money could be helping your actual family. I am your actual family, I reminded him. Or at least I thought I was. Oh, please, he sneered. Do you know how exhausting it is waiting around for you to finally need care? Waiting for this house to finally become a useful asset instead of just sitting here wasting space. Every month you're independent is another month delaying what's inevitably coming. His words landed like physical blows. My own son had been waiting, hoping for me to become incapacitated or die. Get out, I whispered. Mom, get out. I rarely raised my voice, and the force of it startled even me. Get out of my house before I call the police and report you for attempted theft. Benjamin laughed bitterly. And tell them what? That your son, who has power of attorney paperwork ready for your signature, was helping organize your valuables. Who do you think they'll believe, a respected attorney, or an elderly woman with a recent medical crisis affecting her mental state? That's when I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, stopping the recording I'd been making since entering the house. Diane had suggested it as a precaution, and now I was profoundly grateful for her foresight. They can listen to your own words, I said, holding up the phone. Every threatening, dismissive, entitled word. The blood drained from Benjamin's face as he realized what I'd done. Sophia, who had remained silent during his outburst, now tugged urgently at his sleeve. Benjamin, let's go. Now. They left without another word, the front door slamming behind them. In the sudden quiet of my bedroom, I sank onto the edge of my bed, my legs no longer able to support me. Beside me lay the precious items they'd been planning to take, tangible pieces of my history that they'd reduced to dollar values. Diane sat next to me, her arm around my shoulders. You did the right thing, Geneva, as painful as it was. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The confrontation had been necessary, but the cost was devastating. In standing up for myself, I had lost the illusion that my son still loved me, an illusion I realized I'd been desperately clinging to, despite years of evidence to the contrary. As the afternoon light cast long shadows across my bedroom floor, I began the process of reclaiming my home and my life by carefully returning each precious item to its proper place. That first night home from the hospital brought a strange mixture of emotions: grief over the relationship with my son, that I now recognized was irreparably damaged, yet also a tentative sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I had spoken my truth without filtering it through a desire to please or accommodate. Morning brought pragmatic concerns. I checked my blood sugar as instructed, administered my medication, and prepared the specialized breakfast Dr. Wright had recommended. Each step felt like an affirmation: I am capable. I can care for myself. Diane called to check on me. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected," I admitted. There's something clarifying about finally seeing the truth, even when it's painful. "Have you heard from Benjamin?" Not a word. The silence from my son wasn't surprising, but it still hurt. "I have an appointment with Patricia Goldman this afternoon," the elder law attorney Jamal recommended. "Would you like me to come with you?" "Thank you, but this is something I need to do myself." The meeting with attorney Goldman proved invaluable. A no-nonsense woman in her 50s with decades of experience protecting seniors from financial exploitation. She listened carefully to my account of recent events, including the recorded confrontation. "Unfortunately, what you're describing is increasingly common," she said. "Adult children feeling entitled to their parents' assets, sometimes even before those parents are deceased or incapacitated." She outlined several immediate steps: revoking any existing powers of attorney that named Benjamin, creating new advance directives naming Diane as my healthcare proxy, changing the locks on my home, updating my will, and establishing a revocable trust with clear provisions for how my assets would be managed if I became unable to manage them myself. "What about Emma?" I asked. "I still want to provide for my granddaughter's education." Attorney Goldman nodded. "We can establish a separate educational trust for her that would be managed by a trustee of your choosing, not her parents." The changes felt significant but necessary. By the time I left her office, I had set in motion the legal protections that would secure my independence and assets. My next stop was my bank, where I met with Theodore Wilson, a financial advisor who specialized in retirement planning. With his guidance, I restructured my accounts, removing Benjamin's name from everything and establishing new security protocols. "We can set up automated alerts that will notify you of any unusual activity," Theodore explained. "And I would recommend changing all your passwords and security questions to information your son wouldn't know." I took his advice, creating new passwords based on my favorite gardening terms and security questions about my childhood that Benjamin had never shown interest in learning about. By late afternoon, I had taken concrete steps to protect myself financially and legally. What I hadn't prepared for was the emotional reckoning that awaited me at home. As I sat in my garden watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, my phone rang. Benjamin's name appeared on the screen. My heart raced as I answered. "Hello, Benjamin." "Mom." His voice sounded controlled, professional, his courtroom voice. "I got a call from the bank today regarding changes to your accounts." Of course, he hadn't called to apologize or check on my well-being. He'd called because his access to my money had been restricted. "Yes," I confirmed. "I've made some changes to my financial arrangements." Without consulting me, "Mom, this is exactly the kind of impulsive decision-making I've been concerned about. After a medical emergency, making major financial changes is inadvisable." His condescension ignited a spark of anger. "I made these changes on the advice of both a licensed attorney and a certified financial advisor, Benjamin. There was nothing impulsive about it." A moment of silence then. "I see. And may I ask what prompted this sudden need for legal and financial counsel?" "Finding you and Sophia going through my valuables while I was in the hospital was quite motivating," I replied, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. "As were your comments about waiting around for me to need care or die." "That recording was taken out of context," he said stiffly. "I was frustrated and said things I didn't mean." "I think you meant exactly what you said. You've been viewing me as a financial asset rather than your mother. He changed tactics. Mom, I'm worried about you. First the medical emergency, now these erratic financial decisions. Perhaps we should consider a cognitive assessment to ensure you're still capable of managing your affairs. The threat was thinly veiled. If he could establish that I was mentally incompetent, he could potentially challenge my financial decisions and seek guardianship. That's an excellent suggestion, I said, catching him off guard. In fact, Dr. Wright already conducted a cognitive assessment before my discharge, which I passed with flying colors. The results are in my medical record, which my new healthcare proxy can access if needed. Another silence longer this time. New healthcare proxy. Yes, I've updated my advanced directives. Diane Kennedy will make medical decisions for me if I'm unable to do so myself. I could almost hear him calculating his next move. I see. Well, I hope you understand that these decisions have consequences for our relationship. I'm aware, I said quietly. But I've come to realize that our relationship has been built on my constant accommodation of your needs and demands with very little reciprocity. That's not healthy for either of us. So you're cutting me off? His voice rose with indignation. Your only son. I'm establishing boundaries, I corrected him. Something I should have done years ago. And what about Emma? Are you punishing her for her parents' supposed transgressions? The mention of my granddaughter pierced my resolve. Emma will always be my granddaughter, and I love her dearly. I've established an educational trust for her future that will be managed independently of you and Sophia. This information clearly surprised him. I don't understand why you're doing this, Mom. Everything I've done has been for our family's security. No, Benjamin. What you've done has been for your own financial gain at my expense. There's a difference. His tone hardened. You'll regret this approach. Alienating your only family isn't wise at your age. You stopped being my family the moment you decided my value was in my assets rather than my presence in your life. I said the truth of it settling into my bones. I'm not alienating family. I'm protecting myself from exploitation. This conversation is pointless, he snapped. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. The line went dead. I sat in my garden phone in hand, watching as a cardinal landed on my bird feeder, a splash of vibrant red against the deepening twilight. The bird's presence felt like a sign life continuing, adapting, finding nourishment, even as seasons changed. I had survived my medical crisis. I would survive this relational one too. Later that evening, I received a text message from an unknown number. Grandma, it's Emma. I'm using my friend's phone. Are you okay? Mom and Dad are really mad about something but won't tell me what happened. The simple message brought tears to my eyes. I responded carefully, aware that this communication needed to be appropriate without putting Emma in the middle of adult conflicts. I'm fine, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups disagree about important things. I love you very much, and that will never change. Her reply came quickly. I love you too. Can I still visit you sometime? I would like that very much. I wrote back, hope blooming alongside the painful reality of my ruptured relationship with her parents. As I prepared for bed that night, following the careful routine of checking my blood sugar and taking my evening medication, I realized that my health crisis had precipitated something unexpected, a reclamation of my own worth beyond my role as mother and widow. In protecting myself from my son's exploitation, I had affirmed my right to live on my own terms. The path forward wouldn't be easy. There would be lonely moments, difficult conversations, and ongoing legal and financial vigilance. But for the first time in years, I was steering my own course rather than drifting in the current of others' expectations. 6 months passed, bringing changes both expected and surprising. The autumn leaves had turned and fallen, and now December draped my garden in crystalline frost each morning. My diabetes management had become second nature, the blood sugar testing medication schedule and dietary adjustments now seamlessly integrated into my daily routine. Dr. Wright had pronounced herself satisfied with my progress during my 3-month follow-up appointment. Your numbers are excellent, Geneva, she'd said, reviewing my charts. You've taken control of your health in an impressive way. That control extended beyond my physical well-being. With Attorney Goldman's guidance, I had finalized all my legal protections. My home was now part of a revocable trust that would ensure its proper management if I became incapacitated, while Emma's educational trust was firmly established with the bank's trust department as administrator. My relationship with Benjamin remained fractured. After our confrontational phone call, he had made one more attempt at reconciliation, or rather at regaining access to my finances. He'd arrived unannounced on a Sunday afternoon in September, carrying a bouquet of store-bought flowers and a practiced expression of contrition. "Mom, I've been reflecting on our situation." He'd begun standing awkwardly in my living room after I'd reluctantly invited him in. "I may have been overly concerned about your finances, but it came from a place of caring." I'd let him continue, curious to see how he would frame his actions. "Families should be able to work through disagreements," he continued. "I'm willing to put our differences aside and start fresh. Life's too short for estrangement." The sentiment might have moved me had it been genuine, but when he segued into suggestions about simplifying my financial arrangements by adding him back to my accounts for convenience, the true motivation became clear. "Benjamin," I'd said gently but firmly, "I appreciate the gesture, but reconciliation requires honesty. You're not here because you miss me. You're here because you miss access to my money." His face had hardened instantly, the mask of contrition falling away. "You've become cynical and paranoid. This is exactly why elderly parents sometimes need oversight." "I'm not cynical, I'm clear-sighted," I'd corrected him. "And I'm not refusing a relationship with you. I'm refusing financial exploitation disguised as family concern." He'd left in anger the flowers abandoned on my coffee table. I'd later taken them to the hospital, where I'd begun volunteering, placing them at the nurses' station in the geriatric ward as a small tribute to the staff who had treated me with such dignity during my own stay. My volunteer work had become a source of unexpected fulfillment. 3 mornings each week, I spent hours at Massachusetts General Hospital, providing companionship to elderly patients, many of whom had no regular visitors. I read to them, helped them write letters, or simply sat and listened to their stories. The gratitude in their eyes healed something in me that my son's rejection had wounded. Diane remained my steadfast friend, now officially my healthcare proxy and emergency contact. We'd expanded our social circle through the senior center, joining a book club and a gardening committee that maintained the center's community plots. And then there was Michael. Our friendship had deepened gradually, naturally, without pressure or expectation. We enjoyed weekly coffee dates, occasional movies, and had even taken a day trip to a botanical garden in neighboring Connecticut. He understood the complex grief of family estrangement, having experienced similar difficulties with his daughter years earlier. "The hardest part," he'd confided during one of our conversations, "is accepting that you can't make someone value you properly. That's their choice, their limitation, not yours." His wisdom had been particularly comforting during the holiday season, when family estrangement felt most acute. Rather than spending Thanksgiving alone dwelling on past family gatherings, I joined a community dinner organized by the senior center. Michael, Diane, and a dozen other friends had shared a meal that focused on gratitude for present connections rather than mourning absent ones. Communication with Emma remained my brightest joy. After discovering that her parents were monitoring her phone, we'd established a more secure connection. Her school librarian, sensing the importance of our relationship, allowed Emma to use the library computer to email me during study periods. These messages, filled with updates about school projects, friend dynamics, and her growing interest in photography, provided a lifeline to the family connection I still cherished. In October, I'd received a particularly meaningful email from her. "Grandma, we had an assignment to write about someone we admire. I wrote about you. My teacher said it was my best work ever. I told her how you take care of yourself even when it's hard, and how you stand up for what's right even when people are mad at you. I hope that's okay." I'd printed that email, framed it, and placed it on my bedside table, a reminder that even in the midst of painful family rupture, important values were being transmitted to the next generation. As December progressed, I prepared for my 69th birthday, the first I would celebrate without acknowledgement from my son. Rather than dreading the day, I decided to embrace it as a milestone of my newfound independence and resilience. The actual celebration exceeded my expectations. Diane organized a small gathering at my home with Michael, 4 friends from the senior center, and 2 former teaching colleagues in attendance. They arrived bearing thoughtfully chosen gifts, a beautiful bird feeder from Michael gardening tools, from Diane books from the others, and a homemade cake that accommodated my diabetic dietary needs. As we gathered around my dining room table, candles glowing warmly against the early winter darkness outside, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. These people were here not out of obligation, but genuine affection. They valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. Midway through the celebration, my phone chimed with an incoming video call from Emma. I excused myself to answer in the privacy of my study. "Grandma, happy birthday!" Her face filled the screen, eyes bright with excitement. "Are you having a party? I can see decorations behind you." "I am," I confirmed, tilting the phone to show her the festive living room. "Some dear friends came to celebrate with me." "I made you something, but I can't send it yet," she said. "It's a photo essay about strong women. You're in it along with Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Malala. Mom doesn't know I'm calling. She's at a spa day and Dad's at work." The fact that my 12-year-old granddaughter had to sneak phone calls to me highlighted the painful reality of my situation with Benjamin, but I focused instead on the joy of this moment with her. "That sounds like a wonderful project, Emma. I'm honored to be included with such remarkable women." "I miss you," she said simply. "I miss you too, sweetheart. But I'm always here even when we can't talk directly." After we ended the call, I rejoined my birthday gathering with a full heart. These connections, some old, some new, all authentic, formed the foundation of my reconfigured life. Later, as my guests prepared to leave, Michael lingered behind to help with cleanup. As we washed dishes side by side, he spoke thoughtfully. "You know, Geneva, when my Margaret died, I thought my life's meaningful chapters were finished. Then when my daughter pulled away over the inheritance disputes, it felt like a second devastating loss." He handed me a dried plate to put away. But I was wrong. There are always new chapters waiting to be written if we're brave enough to turn the page. I considered his words as I placed the plate in the cabinet. I think that's true. 6 months ago, I couldn't have imagined finding peace after what happened with Benjamin. But here I am, surrounded by genuine care, engaged in meaningful activities, even finding joy again. "That's because your worth was never tied to his perception of you," Michael said. "It was always there waiting for you to reclaim it." As the winter evening settled around my home, I reflected on the journey that had begun with a frightening medical emergency and evolved into a profound life transformation. The betrayal by my son had been devastating, but it had also been clarifying, stripping away pretense and forcing me to confront difficult truths. I had learned that family bonds, while precious, aren't automatically healthy. That setting boundaries isn't selfish but necessary for well-being. That age doesn't diminish my right to respect and autonomy. Most importantly, I had discovered that it's never too late to reclaim your life, to insist on being valued for who you are rather than what you possess, to build connections based on genuine care rather than obligation or advantage. As I stood in my kitchen, watching snowflakes begin to drift past the window, I felt something I hadn't expected to find again after that devastating hospital experience: contentment. Not the complacent happiness that comes from avoiding difficult truths, but the hard-won peace that emerges from facing them head-on and finding strength you didn't know you possessed. The woman who had collapsed in her garden nearly 7 months earlier, overwhelmed, accommodating, reluctant to recognize her son's exploitation, had been transformed. In her place stood someone stronger, clearer-eyed, and more authentically herself than she had been in decades. That transformation hadn't come easily. It had required painful realizations, difficult conversations, and ongoing vigilance. But standing in my warm kitchen, surrounded by evidence of genuine friendship and purpose, I knew with certainty the journey had been worth it. Thank you for sharing this part of my journey with me today. If you've ever had to make difficult decisions about family relationships or stand up for yourself when it felt impossible, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. How did you find the strength to prioritize your well-being? Please like this video. If my experience resonated with you, subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and renewal, and share with someone who might need encouragement to value themselves today. Remember, it's never too late to write a new chapter in your story.